back, listeners, to another episode of Access to Inspiration. Today I'm talking to David Liebnau, who is Client Director and Senior Expert at the SYNK Group based in Berlin, Germany, about why we need heart and courage at times of uncertainty. David has worked in 25 countries with more than 20,000 managers at all levels, and the mission of his work is to inspire and enable individuals and teams to adapt and stay fit for the future. I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say. Welcome, David.
Welcome, Sue. Thanks for the opportunity.
So tell us about what you do and what makes you so interested in leadership.
Well, I'm working in the field of leadership development since more than 20 years. And I've started this work in a way already in 92 when I was reflecting in a 4 days and nights vision quest around my own purpose in life and what I should do and what my contribution could be. And ever since, I followed that path of becoming a great leader myself and helping other great leaders to be the best they can be.
So what happened in those 4 days? Because I'm imagining it wasn't an easy quest for you, or was it?
It was a life-changing experience. Certainly not easy. It was the first time in my life when I was all by myself, casting in the wilderness. And basically, I was as good as I can be quiet and listen, and explored what kind of inspirations and answers I would get to essential questions such as, who am I and what is my contribution? What am I here for?
And when you were thinking about those questions in those 4 days, David, did you come up with clear answers at that time?
Yes, and I'm continued to understand what these answers mean. Or in other words, some questions I think are so powerful that we shouldn't spoil them with just one answer. But I can say that I certainly got guidance and orientation and a vision for myself in my life, which continues to unfold and I continue to follow.
You're reminding me as you're speaking there, David, about TED speaker Simon Sinek and his talk on Start With Why, which really encourages leaders to inspire action in their teams. I'm getting a sense from you that that was perhaps what you were looking for as well, what your why was.
Very much so. Yeah, very much.
Why do you think it's important for leaders to know their why?
Let me probably recite a study to answer your question around retired executives. They were asked, what do you regret the most now that you have retired when looking back at your career? And there were 3 things which were named again and again, which I think are worth to consider, especially for us when we can still make a difference about our career. So number 1 was, they said, gee, I wish I would have celebrated more of my successes.
That's important.
That's important for all the achievers who never take time to celebrate. But I think it's almost like a quick fix. The second and the third answer was more revealing, I think. So a second item was something like, I wish I would have left bigger footprints. So when I'm reflecting about what that could mean, leaving bigger footprints, I'm imagining myself when my grandchildren will ask me, Grandpa, what have you done at work? Then I want to be able to tell great stories. And I think they need to be, from my perspective, connected to values, things which matter for me. It needs to have a value for us, which goes beyond key performance indicators. And then finally, and that's probably the most revealing piece, they said, I wish I would have been bolder, more courageous. And when you think about boldness or courage, I think it takes a connection with the heart. In English, it says core H in a way. I mean, of course, you put a U in it. But in French, it's la coeur. It's the core, which gives us the courage, the boldness to do what we are here for. And if we don't connect with our core, with our heart, we can't tap into courage. And thus, we can't create the contribution we want. And then look back with regret and not with gratitude and fulfillment. So I think it's actually pointing us to a very much underutilized resource in upbringing leadership development, and that is the heart intelligence and the connection with the heart.
I'm also wondering, at this time that the world's facing, where there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of people are thrust into situations that are very unfamiliar to them, and they don't know how long they're going to last.
Exactly.
Where does this courage play a role?
The courage, and let's also honor this, again, underutilized resource of the heart here, because it points us to what you may call a transrational thinking quality or a capacity within us, which we need to develop to manage that outer complexity we are faced with. Now we are facing a time which was never better described with these VUCA terms, which are well known in certain theoretical debates already for some time, but now it's so tangible that the world is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, or defined by ambiguity. And in order to deal with the complexity, we need to develop our own inner complexity. And now, speaking about the courage, we are faced with a situation where we got to embrace uncertainty. We got to embrace not knowing. And that, by definition, brings up a lot of fear. Courage is not the absenteeism of fear, but is feeling fear and moving forward because something else, like your vision, is greater than your avoidance of fear.
So the bigger purpose, the vision, the sense of value that you were perhaps talking about earlier are some of the ways that people can keep moving forward in spite of that uncertainty if they've got those things clear. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and we need the heart and the courage, of course, to be able to navigate through that time of uncertainty, to find inner space in which we can hold our own fear, our own uncertainty, all the complexity of the world, and access qualities such as intuition, a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, a sense of truth. Also, when the rational information is so controversial, ambivalent at times, and confusing or simply outdated.
There's a little bit about trusting in ourselves, I'm getting from what you're saying.
Yeah, trusting and developing trusting connections with others. Because I think what we are facing is a time where we clearly will experience intelligence is what happens between us, is what happens through co-creative dialogue, where we connect deeply with each other. And how Otto Scharmer, for example, defines it by saying we need an open mind, open heart, and open will to create generative, innovative dialogue, which then helps us to co-create new solutions and allow new ways of doing business emerge.
It's almost the reverse of what one might imagine in a time of uncertainty and stress. Rather than closing down and closing up, it's actually opening up to what's there.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks for nailing it in this way. I think it's all about how can we keep our system, mind, heart, vision, capacity, inspiration open and not closing down. Because when we're driven by fear, we are driven by past knowledge. We are driven by our reptile brain, which is very limited in the ability to utilize or leverage the opportunity, which is always there, maybe in disguise, but still being there in any crisis.
So it's interesting you bring up the past, David, because I'm wondering about your past. You've talked about your 1992 experience that helped you to understand the importance of purpose and your why. How have you utilized that insight since then?
I think I pursued what I wanted to do, and that is, in a way, healing relationships in a vertical and horizontal level. So, the relationship to our own potential and the relationships in the workplace, so that people can really fulfill their potential. So, for example, what I've done in the past, after I realized, okay, well, when I came down from that mountain, I thought, well, that's the thing. Everyone should do a Native American Vision Quest, and that's the answer to all that disorientation and lack of power and meaning I see in our society. But then I realized, well, it's probably not so applicable for everyone. Not all people are willing to do such a passage ride. And then I learned about a Gallup online assessment called StrengthsFinder, 180 questions, 45 minutes online assessment, reflecting about the talents of people or helping you to better understand what are your greatest qualities. So that seemed to be more cultural applicable for people. So I started to dive deeper into that tool, for example, and worked for 9 years for Gallup as a senior learning and development consultant in 25 countries, by the way. Ever since, I've worked with 20,000 leaders worldwide. And I'm using, for example, this tool, StrengthsFinder, but many other tools and approaches as well to help people, so individuals and teams, to better understand the individual strength and potential of a person and how to collaborate, how to utilize that in the workplace.
So once a team recognizes and values what other people bring to a team, it's been my experience that rather than people holding on to wanting to do everything themselves, they learn to trust and say, well, David's great at detail, so I'll empower David to do the detail and I'll focus on the things that I'm good at. I don't know if you've had the similar experience from those leaders you've worked with.
Yeah, definitely. And trust, I think, comes with the interface of credibility and reliability and coherence. So, do I perceive you as coherent in what you say and what you deliver and what I feel about you, for example? And in order to perceive your competence, what is also important is distinction of my language. In other words, I think that we shouldn't underestimate the relevance and the power of language and words. We've all heard that term in the beginning was the word, right? And the word helped us to recognize resources in a way. Without a word, I cannot recognize a resource, nor can I utilize it, understand it, or trust in it. And that brings us to the question, for example, how many words does a leader have to describe, recognize, develop, utilize, leverage, etc., the positive qualities within himself, herself, or her peers and employees?
There's something about the language and words being used in a positive, affirming sense to bring out the best.
Exactly. And in a distinguishing sense. For example, if people describe the relationship qualities of another person, you can say, well, he's good with people, but that's rough. You may also say, well, he's a great individualizer, or she is very empathetic, or he's a great includer, or she knows how to build harmonious atmospheres. And the more elaborate your language code is, the more sophisticated is your ability to really play to the strengths of yourself as well as those around you.
From what you're saying, David, it seems that the Strengths Finder tool, as one example, has been really helpful in your work. What else? What else have you been doing since then to develop and help leaders to be more effective?
Nowadays, what becomes really an important asset, not only in myself, but also in the people with whom I'm working, is the ability to relax, to remain open, even under pressure, even in times of adversity, of crisis. As we said before, how to maintain an open system. And for that, my personal meditation practice is very essential. I'm meditating since more than 25 years by now. And initially, I kept it for myself, and I wouldn't tell about it in the business place because that would be considered as esoteric, and you don't want to talk about this in the business world. But nowadays, with an exponential growth of impact studies showing the relevance of mindfulness and meditation in a number of important future skills, we are asked to meditate with our participants, with the leaders, and my executive coaches are very grateful whenever we take a time to center, to connect with themselves, with their potential, their inner complexity, the heart. So I think the ability to center, to be present, to hold space for emotions, for all the movements, and with that also uncertainty, and remain responsive through meditation and comparable practices, I think is vital.
Working on yourself on the inside will have a positive benefit on the outside in terms of how one shows up.
Absolutely. If we don't develop our inner quality or inner complexity, we can't succeed in an outer complexity anymore, I think.
So, if I was thinking about some of the takeaways that I've gleaned so far in our conversation today, one is about a better understanding of strengths, about how one's awareness and management of their emotions and their mental state is very important for them. And also, from a leadership perspective, rather than necessarily giving the right answers, it's about asking the right questions.
Just to add on that, not only asking more questions instead of being more directive and giving answers, I think it's worth to say it is also crucial to ask the right kind of questions, because nowadays I think there's not necessarily a lack of know-how, but more often a lack of know-why. And if people start reflecting about why are we doing what we do, they themselves will put out quite another level of engagement and ability. I think the organization thrives if they have a powerful collective meaning making know why, which connects with the individual. So if the collective know why connects with the individual know why of each of the members. The whole notion on purpose is not nowadays anymore so new. But what I like to emphasize is the importance to give yourself some time out of the hamster wheel and not just pursuing the next bigger number and selling that as a purpose, because that doesn't connect to the heart of the people. And if you want to put out a powerful vision statement for an organization or your team, you need to connect with your own heart. You need to connect, you need to listen, be still, and give yourself some time, some off time, but not being, chased by the urgent. Allow yourself to be guided by the important and listen to the whisper of the future. If you're quiet, you will hear it.
So as I'm speaking to you today, David, I'm wondering what's whispering for your future.
Great question. Asking me in a time where 90% of my year plan is canceled. Right now, I'm in the state of not knowing and listening, to be very honest. Right now, I'm connecting with my own fear of not knowing and my sadness of all the great projects which I developed in the last 6 to 9 months and are now not meant to happen in the way as I initiated it or intended it. What I'm seeing, of course, is a transformation into more digital work. That's for sure. I don't have to be a prophet to say that. And luckily, we are moving well towards that direction and developed already some digital products and services. I think that will grow. What I'm also sensing as like a whisper of the future is the ability to reach out to people through non-physical contact. So developing a felt sense for each other through a podcast or a webcast or just a phone call, but developing our capacity to really create intimacy without the need of physical contact. And from that, then trust and collaboration and all of that.
So whilst I get that acceptance of sadness and loss that you are now facing, as many of us are in the situation of our year not being as we originally intended, I'm also hearing about having that openness to look and just be guided by what may be opportunities or a felt sense of something different coming along.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is vital also to allow us to be touched by our humanity. If I'm not accessing my own core in terms of my fear, my sadness, I can't access at the same time my greatest potential. Again, I need to connect with my heart also to be inspired eventually.
Well, it's been great in our conversation today, David, to get a sense of connecting with your heart, the emotion in our conversation today. I'm wondering, as a closing thought that you might have for our listeners, what they might take away from our conversation today and put into practice immediately for themselves.
Be a bee, not a fly. So look out for the positive, not the shitty things. Accept where you are. Remember that, in our deepest humanity lies our greatest potential. Allow yourself to be touched by what happens and access your heart intelligence as an important resource for meaning making, for connecting with those people who are important for your future success. And that will strengthen your resilience in times of change.
Brilliant. It's been very good to speak to you today, David, and to hear your insights. If people want to find out more about you and your organization on the internet or social media, how can they do that?
Oh, very simple. Just go to synk-group.com, and sync is spelled SYNK group.com.
Fantastic, David. It's been really great to talk to you. Thanks for your time today.
Likewise. Thank you, Sue.
I hope you enjoyed hearing from David Liebnau, about why connecting with courage and heart can help us navigate through the uncertainties of today's world. If you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you are using, and tell your friends about us so we can continue to reach more listeners. Next week, I will be talking to Naya Bianco about what life is like up north. She is from Greenland, a country that is the largest island in the world, yet only has a population of 56,000 people. I hope you will join me then.